I'm gonna plan to use 8 gallons of water, which means we're gonna have to come back down to the creek and fill up. Only how many days till elk season? That's a good training.
I knew that was gonna be slick.
I'd like to put a stand in one of those oak trees. With this logging, it's really thickened up this spot. Top of the ridge here, you got the logging trail going down. South wind blow it over that valley we just came out of. All right, it is July 23rd today. Max and Grant and myself are out here this morning, and we are tackling a poor man style plot on a property that I help manage. This property, there's no way to get equipment back here. This is an old power line going through here, and there's literally no other food besides natural browse on this property. There's no ag, there's no other food plots. This is the only area we could get any food, so I think it'd be a really good spot. It's just a lot of work to make it happen, obviously. So we came up, hiked up this ridge. I'm gonna spray this with a combination of Roundup and 2,4-D. There's a lot of different stuff out here, so I'm gonna try to get the best kill possible. It's probably not gonna be perfect. It's not gonna be the prettiest food plot, I'm sure, but I just wanna get some food in this spot because I think it could help. It could definitely draw some deer in from a pretty good ways away. The further we get into the season, there potentially could be a couple other hunters on this property as well. So just trying to make it a little more attractive to keep deer moving through this area. It's a really cool spot. The access isn't great, but there's a lot of deer in this area. So I'm gonna get to work here. It's gonna be a bear. My legs are gonna get tore up with everything that's in here, but hoping to at least get a decent kill and get some food planted here. I'm gonna actually wait because I'm spraying 2,4-D and has some residual to it. I'm gonna wait to come back and seed it, which we don't have any rain in the forecast anyway, so it's probably not a big deal. But my plan is to do a combination of brassicas and clover, small seeds that will work their way into the soil without any tilling or anything. And I actually I'm gonna see what it looks like as far as how good of a kill I get. But I'm probably not even gonna burn this. I'm probably just gonna seed right into that dead thatch, let that dead thatch kind of help hold some moisture in. We're looking at a little bit of a dry spell here in Iowa, so I wanna make sure that I'm not removing any more moisture than I need to. So that's the plan. It's gonna be some work, so we're gonna get going. Half acre on the nose. I'm gonna start at that end, work my way back and forth, slowly working my way towards this north end. Plan on doing 2 refills with the backpack. So this first one I'm just gonna try to get halfway across, and we'll go fill up and hit the second half. Man, not in elk shape yet. See if I can go find my spot where I left off. All right, we finished spraying our little poor man plot and came over to a different property to get some more work done. But I was gonna touch on one thing that I've gotten a number of questions on, and that's just kind of my experience ground hunting versus tree stand hunting and what I learned over the past couple of years. And first and foremost, I'm not an expert, I'm far from it, on ground hunting. I've had a little bit of success over the past couple of years, but it's just more sharing my experience and what I've learned and some little things that I will try to apply moving forward as I do it more often. First and foremost, I learned that ground hunting is a lot more challenging than hunting from a stand. I grew up hunting from the ground a little bit, but in general, I think it's more challenging for a couple different reasons. One, the visibility is probably the biggest thing that I missed about being in a tree stand the last couple of years when I hunted from the ground. I just felt like I was always missing out on something. You go from being able to see a big area to being able to see just a fraction of an area just because you're at ground level. Another reason why I think hunting from the ground is more challenging is the likelihood of being seen. So you're taking yourself and you're putting yourself at a deer's eye level, and you're increasing that likelihood. And of course, adding a cameraman to the mix makes it even more difficult. So I think that's reason number 2 why ground hunting is more challenging than hunting from a stand. And then finally, and I don't have any proof of this, but I do think you leave more residual scent hunting from the ground compared to a tree stand. You know, you get up, you have more consistent airflow, air movement when you're up in a tree, more consistent wind direction. Or on the ground, sometimes you're crawling around and you're sitting in one spot for a long time with sometimes no air movement. And even if you don't get busted during the actual hunt, I think there's a greater chance of a deer, just because everything you're doing is ground scent. So I think there's a greater chance of a deer picking up on that after the hunt, you know, a day or 2 later. So I do think you have more of an impact on an area hunting from the ground than you do in the tree stand. So those are all 3 reasons why I believe it's more challenging. But you know, I say challenging because I enjoy that part of it rather than difficult. It is harder, but it's fun. It's a fun challenge. And the last couple of years, it wasn't like I was just trying something new. I was kind of forced into it by the deer I was hunting and the terrain that they lived in. You know, 2019, it was the big deer that Grant and I were going after, and then last year, the Big 10. Very similar environment, similar habitat that really just forced me into trying something new, and I enjoyed it, and I do plan on doing more of it in the right situation as we move forward. So a couple more things that I learned, and keep in mind as I go through this, I'm really referring to a bow hunting perspective of hunting on the ground, not gun hunting. If I was a gun hunter, I'd probably do it a lot more often. But from a bow hunting perspective, hunting on the ground, you know, there's a really high importance of a good camouflage and good cover around you, and not just back cover. I think in a tree stand, a lot of times you can get away with just good back cover, but on the ground, you need some cover in front of you and behind you. You really need to completely break up your outline and hide any little movements, where again, a tree stand, you could potentially get away with a little bit. And a ghillie suit, I think, is helpful. I did use that a couple times over the last 2 years. I do think that's helpful. I just went on Amazon and bought mine for like 23 bucks. I just found one that was really light colored that matched the surroundings I was in, the native grasses, and it seemed to work really well. So, you know, obviously one, I don't think it would do very well if I was in a dark colored ghillie suit, but try to match your surroundings, obviously. And I guess the other thing I would say, if you do use a ghillie suit, one thing I learned is make sure you practice in it. And if you need to, take scissors and trim any strings. I had to trim some on my arm and then across my chest right here so that my bowstring wasn't hitting it. So, you know, think about those types of things, practice and get comfortable shooting from it if you do choose to go the ghillie suit route. One advantage of hunting from the ground compared to a tree stand is your mobility. You know, you have the opportunity to move around and make adjustments, but it's important to keep that as a consideration early on. So when you're going to set up in a spot, kind of evaluate it from a bigger picture and think about, okay, if he comes out here, I could potentially use this low spot and adjust, or I can move up the field edge a little bit. There are a couple times where I did that, where we made moves based on a deer coming out, and sometimes they were very subtle moves. I remember one hunt when I was with Grant was quite a ways away, but and we had the Big 10 coming to us. This was in 2019. I moved down the hill. It was probably only like maybe 10 yards of just real slow crawling through the native grasses. And other times we've made moves where we're on a dead sprint to cover hundreds of yards. So there's different things you can think about, but when you're going to actually set up on the ground somewhere, think about where you can move, what types of things you can use to create barriers between you, allowing you to make those adjustments, because that is one of the biggest advantage of being on the ground. As long as you set up in the right spot, you can make that move and make that adjustment, whereas a tree stand, you're pretty much stuck. One more thing with regards to setup locations, when I was hunting on the ground, I was really more focused on travel locations or trails. You know, even when I hunted near the food, I was still set up in spots that deer were going to potentially walk by going to or from that food source. And I think that's important because when you're more likely to get picked off when you're on the ground than you are at tree stands. So keeping that in mind, unless you're hunting one single deer and there's no other deer around, you're likely going to have to let some deer get past you. And so that's the reason I would hunt trails or just off of trails, 25-30 yards off of trails, to where deer could still go by me and not get picked off until my target deer would in theory walk by. So keep that in mind too. Maybe it's not best to just set up right on a field edge to be able to shoot out in the field. Think about those adjacent entry and exit routes for the deer, how they get to those food sources. Might be better locations to set up on. So like I said, those are a few things that I learned over the past couple of years, if you want to call it that, and just maybe some tips if you want to try it or get into it. I think I'd say I still prefer stand hunting just mainly for the visibility. I think you just can see more and learn a lot more throughout a hunt from a tree stand. But I really truly enjoyed the challenge of being on the ground, and for that reason it's going to be a part of my arsenal moving forward. Even if it's not maybe the best option, I'm at a point where I enjoy the challenge of things, and I'm gonna keep finding ways to challenge it. I don't ever want it to get to, and I'm nowhere near the point where it's easy, but I don't ever want to get close to that. I don't want to go away from the reason I enjoy bow hunting, and finding different ways to challenge myself. I plan on continuing to do those types of things. But like I said, I will spend a lot of time at a tree stand as well, and for most of you guys that have watched my hunts, I'm pretty mobile when tree stand hunting too. I do a lot of hanging hunts, and this year, this stand sitting here is going to be my main stand that I use. It's the new Hilo from Novix, and it's about perfect for what I do. I mean, I want something lightweight. I think this one's just a little over 9 pounds, easy to carry in. I'll put backpack straps on this, but it's gonna hold the sticks just fine. I may add a 5th stick as well, just to get a little bit higher in some situations. But anything we can do to keep our setup nice and small and compact, especially when we're potentially carrying 2 stands in on each hunt, is important to us. So if you're in the market, I would definitely check out the Hilo from Novix. As a reminder, we're able to pass our discount on to you guys too, so if you want to use our code and get 15% off, it's down in the description. But definitely a really cool stand. They just came out with it a couple weeks ago, so I'm excited to use it this fall. For now, I'm gonna get back to work. A long list of projects to do this summer. I can't believe it's already August, almost August already. We'll be hunting before we know it. Heading out to Montana again in September too, to chase elk around. And we're finally finishing up the production on last year's elk hunt, so I'm excited to share that with you guys. It should be released within the next couple weeks. In the meantime, we're gonna go catch up with Josh and Drake. I appreciate you guys watching.
All right, guys, well, here it is, July 24th, and myself, Drake, and 2 of our interns have snuck down to the piece of property that Drake actually introduced 2 weeks ago to you. And we're just trying to get in a couple of arrow shots before we go out and velvet film tonight. It's actually the first time, unfortunately, that I've shot my bow since turkey season, and got this set up back in the spring, new RX5 and ABB Platinum strings. And our partners over at ABB are actually running a 10% off for all of our viewers, and you can find that on the screen here, or it's actually in the description as well. It's MWWTL, and that'll give you 10% off at checkout. And I want to highlight a few things about the Platinum set that they make. Number one, they're one of the best companies out there to work with, American made. Everybody over there are great people. And on this Platinum series, they use what's called the AccuSet technology. And long story short for that, when you get this string put onto your bow, you don't have to do anything else. There's no, once you get it tuned, it's not gonna stretch on you. You're not gonna have servings come apart. I mean, it's truly the best option available. And that has served me pretty well. You know, like I said, I don't get to shoot my bow as much right now, you know, being on an editing suite all day. And that's something that really matters for me. You know, I know this set's gonna last me for multiple years, and it's a very easy process. Go to the website, and on your bow, you know, you're gonna be able to look at where your string length is, and then on this bow specifically, I've only got a control cable, but you get to select your model, select the, you know, colors, all of it's fully customizable, and like I said, overall, just a really great product that I think can be overlooked, you know, because every bow does come with a string already. But, you know, when we put these on here, we know we have nothing to worry about for as many years we're using them. So yeah, that code's good through August 2nd. Again, it's gonna get you 10% off at checkout. Code is MWWTL. We're gonna shoot a few more arrows here, and then the field that we're going to film tonight is actually not too far away, luckily. So a couple good bucks stepping out in those beans. Once we get over there, Drake's gonna give you an update on this farm and what bucks have been showing up. And yeah, excited to see some velvet for the first time this year. That person almost needs to be up there by that big tree.
All right, well, as you guys can see, we have reached the dog days of summer here. We are drenched. It's about 95 degrees. Thought we'd come down here. Josh was getting his bow sighted in, and we're kind of running out of time, so we decided just to slip back in here in this little secluded bean field on the new management farm that I introduced to you guys a couple weeks ago on the main show. The spot we're at is a bean field basically right behind the house or right behind the pond, and there's a couple really good deer showing up on Cuddy Link right here. One big, tall 8-pointer. I think we have the sheds from him from last year. I actually filmed him in this bean field about a week and a half ago. I was up on top of the hill just glassing, but he's showing up in here every single night. There's another really mature 7-pointer that's been showing up. This is really our first velvet sit of the year. We've been driving around. The guys have been filming some really good deer around the house and stuff, but this is our first official velvet sit. So as far as these bucks go, you know, I don't know that I'll necessarily be targeting one of these bucks myself. I may put one of the interns on one of these deer, or, you know, one of our buddies may come in and try to kill that tall 8-pointer or one of these 7-pointers. So it's just a deer to keep tabs on. But we still don't have any pictures of Big Heavy or any of the other deer really that we hope to find back. But that's kind of just why we're in here. We're just in here seeing what these deer are doing, how they're using this bean field. So these next couple weeks are going to be super busy on this farm, getting everything planted. Bearing rain coming in. It's been super dry. It's going to be dry for the next 7 to 10 days. So I think we're going to wait to get our fall food plots in until we get a little bit of that rain. So these next couple weeks are going to be a super busy time for basically everybody. I know Mike's been hard at work on some of his farms and filming some of those giant deer he's got. Jared's been hard at work doing food plots. I do know that. Josh has been busting his butt here for the last couple months trying to finish up Chasing November. And that's going to release at the about the first week of August, right in there. So looking forward to that series getting released. I know Josh is ready to get out of the house and out of the office and get out and do some velvet filming. So this is definitely an exciting time of the year for all of us. We all love getting out, sweating our butts off and filming these big deer in velvet. So hopefully we can lay eyes on one of these bucks we got pictures of in this field and have a good night of velvet scouting. Right down to 20 minutes left, and we got 3 does that have been on us all night blowing, and no bucks. Seen a couple does across the field, but we debated on bailing and going filming off the road or staying here, and we just decided to stay. More deer popping out. I mean, this is the hottest it's been in the last probably 2 weeks, so you know, maybe that has something to do with why these bucks aren't moving in daylight, but they've been on the camera real consistent, so I figured we'd at least lay eyes on them. But that's how it goes sometimes. So like I said, we're down to the last 10 minutes of daylight, and just hoping one of these bucks comes out.